660 AM. The Answer.
More of Ladies Can We Talk with Debbie Georgatos, right here on 660 AM The Answer.
Hey there, welcome back to Ladies Can We Talk. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. I believe we have on the line one of my favorite radio hosts. I love going on his show, named Gary Sutton. Hello, sir.
Hi, Debbie. How are you tonight?
Great. How are you?
It's always a pleasure when I'm talking to you, so it makes it a great night. Thanks.
Fun to have you on. This is, I told our guests, our listeners before the break, you're in York, Pennsylvania, or your radio show comes out of York, Pennsylvania, right?
Right. Yeah, you can hear us on newsradio910.com around the country, much as I'm listening to your station tonight. So it's we cover pretty much south central Pennsylvania all the way down into Baltimore, Maryland. We're about 45 minutes away, 45 miles away from there. So we have a fairly wide extension here in Pennsylvania, yes.
Well, actually, I was with a guy at our PR firm this week working on something. And anyway, he said, hey, I heard you on Gary Sutton. I said, how'd you hear me on Gary Sutton? So, yes, you're on. You're on. It was kind of funny. He just happened to be listening to you online, and your show is wonderful. Well, I want to just jump in and ask you this. I love thinking about how, people in Texas, we've been in Texas 15 years. We love it here. People in Texas hear this tweet that Hillary Clinton put out in which she said essentially, let's be clear, Islam is not our adversary. Muslims are peaceful and tolerant and have nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism. I'm not even going to prejudice you by telling you what I think, how most people in Texas would react, but do you think that message resonates with people in the East Coast who might be a little more liberal?
I have to tell you, in my area here, they're not all terribly liberal, and we like to think that we have a little bit of common sense. And so when we watch Hillary Clinton, who seems to move to wherever it's going to give her the best ratings, we see her taking on positions and saying things that aren't passionate by her. They're read. You and I don't have to read right now. We're sitting here talking. Hillary Clinton has to read her statements because she has to remember what she said from day to day to remember what lie she told the day before. So, no, you're not prejudicing me at all. I think the idea is, let's be clear, Islam is not our adversary. One of the things that really is bothering a lot of people right now, at least in our neck of the woods, Debbie, is the idea that we're tired of talk. It's one of the reasons that you're seeing the rise of the non-traditional candidates this year. You and I have talked about a lot with Carly Fiorina, with the Ben Carsons, with the Donald Trumps, and anybody else who is not just going to talk anymore, but actually is going to do something. Hillary Clinton has not done anything really to help our world situation. In fact, when you see her hands involved in what has been going on right now, it's incredibly negative. And so the idea that she is going to lecture us and tell us that Islam is not our adversary, most of us poor dumb knuckle draggers figured that out some time ago. What we haven't figured out yet is why she doesn't recognize that Islamic terrorism is our adversary. And by saying Islamic terrorism, Islamic extremist terrorism, we are being very specific on what it is that is wrong. And no one is saying that Islam is all bad. Obviously, there are a lot of secular Islamic people living amongst us who like the same things we are. The problem is when a religion gets hijacked by somebody, that's the worst kind of terror around the world, because then you do have questions about things, and it does make you want to pause and be somewhat cautious in the way you proceed when you know that the enemy is not wearing a uniform and not representing just one country.
Well, yeah, that's exactly. I'm glad you said all that. And, this is the real issue that is the rub surrounding the Syrian refugee question is how do you know where in the range of Islamic beliefs all of these people fall? How do you know, even if you say you have some way to vet them, which, FBI head James Comey told Congress in October, no, we have no way to vet them. But, even if you have, how do you know? And you're right about not having uniforms. We don't have any way to see that. So to me, I don't even understand why Hillary is supporting President Obama on this, bringing more refugees here. Because it seems to me that every the polls are overwhelming. People don't want them brought here. So is it she's got to play to his voters, or does she really not understand the problem?
She's got to figure out where the point is where she breaks with him. There's going to come a Robert Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson moment for her at some point in time where she's going to have to break away. But right now, she can ride along on his numbers, which are okay at this point, but she can't look like she's breaking totally away from the party because right now she's courting the left. It's hard to believe there are people further left than she is, but the Elizabeth Warren part of the party is still somewhat in question for her. She wants to make sure that courting the Elizabeth Warren part and also eventually courting the Bernie Sanders part, that's going to bring her back to the middle when she has to come back and talk to all of us, not just the Democratic far-left people. She's got to be aware of that. And so I think in the long run, Debbie, one of the things that she's worried about right now, she can't make that moment break from Obama yet. Now, once she gets to a general election, then I think you'll see more of an independent stance on some of these things. And yet it will be contrived, as it always is.
You know, it's interesting, too. Bill, her husband, Bill Clinton, really was very well loved within the African-American voting base. I don't know what the percentages were, but, African-Americans tend to vote Democrat anyway, and he especially courted that vote and had a good rapport. And I think that Hillary is really wanting to be sure they all stay in her camp. Democrats are always identifying little hyphenated groups of Americans who will be with them if they can have the women and the blacks and whoever else they would put in their groups, the other minorities. I think she's so afraid of saying anything that maybe would alienate some African Americans who think she's criticizing the first black American president.
Well, of course, her husband was the first American black president, right?
Good point. Good point.
Obama's actually the second one, but I say that was tongue somewhat planted in cheek. But the thing you have to remember, I think, with the Democrats, one of the great things that they have to remember is divided we stand and divided we fall. You know, it's not united we stand because they are made up of so many different far-flung groups, and you have to be religious in terms of how you obey them, from the LGBT community to the black community to the environmentalists. And so it's all these different groups, and they're all very divided. But if the Democrats stand united with them, they're okay. Now, once you get away from the primary elections, then you've got to decide, how do I go get that other group of people? It's going to have to give me a majority in the country to get over the top. And that's what's going to be interesting. And I think the fervor that people came to the voting booths with in 2008 and 2012 is the concern for Hillary Clinton. The fervor they came to the ballot boxes in the off years where they elected primarily Republicans and rejected Obama's policies really is something else. And so when you look at those two presidential elections, you've seen a lot of them like I have, Debbie. What's really interesting about all this is the presidential elections are personality-driven. The off-year elections are issue-driven. And I think you're going to see not only personality-driven in this next presidential election, but you're also going to see terrorism front and center with the economy very closely right there behind.
You know, and this terrorism front and center, we have one more answer, but this terrorism front and center thing is so true. And there's one group of voters that Democrats tend to assume they will get, and that is especially young women voters.
Yes.
And single voters. But I don't know, on this terrorism thing, watching what happened in Paris, looking at the uncertainty around the world, I don't know what the Democrats do to assuage that group. I mean, Hillary's been pretty far out there defending Islam, talking about it's great to bring more Syrian refugees here. I just think that terrorism may bring especially women voters over to the conservative side this time, because what they basically want is security, and you can't have a secure country if you're going to bring in more and more potential terrorists.
Well, I think you've hit on something, Debbie. I think in the long run, I believe that terrorism becomes a uniting force. We looked at the vote in the House this week, and 47 Democrats jumped over to the Republican side on that. I don't think it's a Republican or a Democratic split right here. When terrorists come to kill you, they're not going to, sign you up and say, by the way, you're Republican or Democrat, Christian or Muslim. They're here to kill. They're here to kill Americans. And so just as we saw in 9/11, people didn't check to see who was in the tower and what party they were in or anything else, or check the Pentagon to see what they were in, or check on that plane when it went down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. They basically said, we are terrorists. We're here to kill people. We're here to strike a blow for whatever it is, Islamic extremism or radical jihadism, as you hear the left say. So in the long run, I think that's where we are right now, that's starting to unite America. And I think in the long run, the more we see this, and again, if they strike in the United States, it will bring us together in a way that we probably haven't seen in some time, maybe since 2001.
Gary said, and I think that's a great point. You're exactly right. If you could quickly tell our listeners one more time how to listen to your radio show online. NewsRadio910.com. They can tune in 9 to noon weekdays. That's 9 to noon a.m., and that is Eastern Standard Time. And you can hear Debbie Georgatos a lot. We love to have her on our show. Always great insights, Debbie. Thanks so much. Gary, thanks so much also for calling in.